Last call. We're going to let these gentlemen up here grab their seats and get started. Hey, one housekeeping item before we go. In the very unlikely event that we need to vacate this space, we've got 3 options to exit. I will be exiting right here. Nearest to me, that takes you outside. There's another exit down this way that'll take you to the concourse outside, and then where you came in, there's obviously that was an entrance. It's also an exit that will get you out to the street. So hopefully we won't need that, and hopefully our virtual attendees know what they need to do to get out of wherever they are safely in case anything happens there. So good morning, everyone. I'm John Gromos, Vice President with Turner Construction, and on behalf of our entire panel, I want to thank you all for being here. We've got a great turnout here. I've kind of wondered, Monday morning, 7:45, we're still working through all this COVID stuff. It is great to see so many people here in person, and we've got a great live audience as well, virtual audience versus via, I guess, YouTube. So thank you all for being here as well. I think we had about 100 people sign up to be here in person. We should get pretty close there. I understand we should have about 150 people joining us via YouTube, so that is fantastic. I want to also thank Sierra. I'm not sure where Sierra is at, but Sierra with the sounds, thank you so much for hosting us here, First Horizon Park. We're very glad to be here. Relative to attendance, congratulations to you and the sounds. Set the 2021 attendance record for minor league baseball this year, so congratulations. Hey, so we're going to jump into questions here very quickly. We have some great experts up here. We're going to share some great perspectives, but we also want to carve out time for you, our live audience, to ask questions. And Jessica will walk around with a microphone. Just raise your hand when we get to Q&A about 8:35 or 8:40 Central Time. And for those that are joining us virtually on YouTube, there is a chat feature that you'll be able to submit your question that Jessica will also get, and she will address those questions with us as we get going too. So last thing I want to cover before we get into our panelists, a couple people have asked me, why is Turner doing this and why are we doing it in Nashville? Turner, very proud to be one of the nation's leading sports builders and have been for a long, long time. Engineering News Record ranks us as one of the top sports builders for many years, Dewey. I don't know what the run is, but we're very proud. We often get consulted by our clients and our future clients, potential clients, about what are the trends that are going on, certainly cost information, schedule information. We've got tremendous expertise that we love sharing to help our clients make informed decisions. And then when it comes to why Nashville, I think arguably Nashville, and Scott could probably attest to this as we're talking, has more going on from a sports facility standpoint either now or in the future than anybody in the country, any city in the country. The Nashville SC, our soccer club, has their stadium going on, the MLS stadium at the fairgrounds, that'll be complete next summer. The Titans have announced a pretty significant renovation to Nissan Stadium in the near future. Bridgestone Arena constantly has things going on with the Preds, the Ford Ice facilities, but then all the upgrades they do to maintain their status as one of the top sports and entertainment facilities, not only in the country, but really in the world. Our speedways, our super speedway had an investment done over the summer. I think there's more coming there. The mayor's committed dollars to the speedway at the fairgrounds. There's more work there. Vanderbilt, APSU, TSU, MTSU, from a collegiate standpoint, have all announced sports facility projects. Let's see, Major League Baseball has been in the news at least, just relative to a potential relocation or expansion to Nashville, and there's probably several more that I'm missing. So anyway, we feel that we're in a great position as a city for a lot of great things to happen, and we've got a great panel here just to share some insights and perspectives on what we should be thinking about, just we collectively as an audience and fans, actually, when it comes to new sports facilities going forward. So I've asked our panel to introduce themselves. I'll fill in some blanks maybe in case it's appropriate, but I'm going to start with Dewey Newton.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having us in Nashville. Brings back a lot of good memories when I traveled through here quite a bit, but also built the original Nashville Super Speedway about 15 or 20 years ago. But my name's Dewey Newton. I've been with Turner for 36 years. Grew up in sports, of course. Ran the Kansas City, Missouri office for many years, which is every sports architect in their life has gone through there at one time or another. But really took on the role of national sports and public assembly. And people say, what's public assembly? It's not churches, it's convention centers, basically. Anything where people gather over, 10, 20, 30,000 falls into my world. So I've been in professional sports at every level for at least the last 10 years, and really look forward to sharing some insight with you today. So thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Good morning, everybody. Todd Fleming with Legends, Vice President and General Manager on the global sales side. So revenue generation is our specialty, and I've spent 10 years in the NBA and the NFL prior to Legends. So looking forward to being with everybody here for an hour.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Demetra Thornton. I'm a sports architect. I've been doing this for a little over 15 years. Like Dewey mentioned, I was in Kansas City as a sports architect for about 5 years, and now I'm in LA as a sports architect. Love this, grew up playing sports, and for me it's about building a community through sports facilities. So that's how I grew up, that's how I met people, and I'm continuing to meet people through sports right now. Thank you.
I'm Scott Ramsey. Good morning. I'm the local with the Nashville Sports Council, and have been with them for 26 years. Our role in the community has been and continues to be really kind of the quarterback to bid and package event bids to recruit events here on the sports side for Nashville. Obviously, to complement the regular seasons of our tenants, Sounds, Titans, Predators, SC. And try to maximize the use of our public facilities the best we can to positively impact our community, both economically and through usually the media coverage and engagement through volunteers and so forth for our events. So thanks for being here, and thanks to everybody kind of coming into Nashville.
We're fortunate to have a great mix. Scott is a fixture in the sports community here in Nashville and has been for a long, long time, and we're really blessed to have him in that role. You may know, some of you may know, that Scott played golf at Old Dominion University. He's a plus handicap, so he's like a first-round draft pick when it comes to scrambles that are happening locally. So it's great to have Scott here locally. Demetra played softball at Hampton University back in the day. So we got a couple of former athletes. I'm a former athlete at Vanderbilt as well. So we have some expertise from the playing side of things as well as on the design and construction side of things as well. So, hey, let's jump into it. And kind of a general question just to begin with, but I'm going to ask everybody, and I'm going to start with Todd. I'll pick on Todd. We're all fans, right? Hopefully some of us are going to be at the game tonight, the Titans game tonight. From a fan experience, what is changing now and what will change going forward as we attend events live?
Shocking that the sales guy gets the first to talk, right? No, it's a really interesting question, and fortunately, I've been able to go to some events over the last 4 to 5 months since things are starting to reopen, and I went to it specifically looking for the ingress experience. What are we going to do to make things more efficient or make people feel more comfortable on the ingress? And that's all a technology standpoint. So I think the technology to make the kind of scanning, no longer going through the mags, having the contactless type of experiential stuff moving forward, I think is what you'll see stadiums start to migrate towards, whether that's in new builds or upgrading the technology to be able to handle that in the future. So it's more seamless, people feel comfortable, less contact, but still a visual face of somebody there on the other end to make you have the human experience of being at a game or a match. I then go inside the stadium, and I think we were morphing towards this a little bit pre-COVID. But the generation that's coming up, and I don't like to bang on the younger generation, but their attention span is different than what ours is, right? There's more variety that they want in their experience of going to an event. And so for us to drive people there to make these buildings financially sound on the front end, keep them entertained during the event, and give them an experience afterwards, I think you're going to have to start to see things that allow people movement throughout the building, have a different experience from place to place that they go, or have one experience that carries on throughout the venue or the event. And I go back to the thing that comes to mind, and again, I'll go to one of our stadiums, but the work that Wasserman and AT&T did at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, where they had the selfie moment, where you could choose a player, or you could choose something that would happen on the screen behind you, and then it made you feel like you were literally in the picture with the team. Then you could put that out on social media, and that's all. That to me is the experiential stuff that we need to move towards. So it's one thing to make people feel safe, make it contactless, and then it's another thing of providing variety of an experiential moment through technology while you're in the building.
I like what you're saying there. Just to lean into it a little bit more, I think at Gensler, that's a lot of our point of view, is creating this fan experience, and it starts from the time you leave your home, right? Like your parking experience, your ingress experience, getting to your seat, getting your food quickly, getting in and out of the restrooms and things like that. Keeping all that seamless, so you want to leave your home, frankly, right? You want to leave your home and be in this facility, be around fans, be in the environment, giving you something different each time you visit, right? Something that's a little bit different every time you visit. Oh, I didn't see that, whether it be in the graphics, in any of the seating design. I want to sit in a different section of the building this time, so I can experience it from another perspective. I think, again, being maybe of the younger generation that you're not making fun of.
I'm not.
You're absolutely right about the attention span. And, I want to walk around. I don't want to sit in this seat, regardless of how comfortable it is. I don't necessarily want to be in a suite. I want to be able to interact with my friends. I want to say, hey, Todd, you're in section 230. Let's meet up, around concession, a local food concession or something like that. So that is definitely what we're seeing change. Obviously, safety is a concern, COVID's a concern, but some of those things will hopefully go away, and it'll be back to the game and back to the experience and, being able to be a fan.
Yeah, well, I'll probably talk way too much today, so sorry, guys. But yeah, I know. but I think that also then too, like as you go back to thinking about how stadiums should be designed or renovated or how they should operate moving forward, I think that's also endemic to which sport it traditionally houses.
Very fair.
Right? I mean, and my responsibilities I've got North American professional sports and international, right? So internationally, they could care less about hospitality. They could care less about the experience on the concourse. They care about the 45 to 50 minutes. They care about, can I get a drink how quickly can I have my drink over the course of 15 minutes, so that way I'm back in my seat screaming my head off for the rest of the match, right? So I think, again, it's as we think about this, it's not only how does the building serve the community, serve the masses, but then how do we make it operate in a more seamless way for the sport or the major event that traditionally takes place there?
I guess I would only add to that. I used to say the fan experience a lot because that was a trend, and it still is, and it will always be, because that's where the income comes from, among other revenues, obviously. But now I say atmosphere. When I sit down with a client in the first or second time I meet with a client, is what is the atmosphere you want to produce inside this venue? And it's not just it's anything. I mean, I used to work, when I was with Turner, of course, I worked with NASCAR for 10 years straight. And all the tracks, drive fast, turn left. That's all we heard. Drive fast, turn left, But they race on Sunday, and their goal was to compete with the NFL, because that's what you watch on Sunday. You watch racing in the South, and everywhere else you watch football. So we created what's the atmosphere, and what's the atmosphere at each track, because they're all different. And we created, over 10 years, NASCAR completely revamped almost every racetrack on the circuit for the fan atmosphere, and that includes the drivers, it includes the owners, it includes all the things. So to me, I take it beyond fan experience, and I want people to walk away and say, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen, no matter what sport it is.
John, I think from my perspective, or our perspective here in Nashville, we kind of take the fan process when we try to recruit events a little broader, and saying, A, where is the facility? So we really pitch the campus effect that we can create in Nashville around our facilities. And then how do we turn a game into an event? So it might be a 3-hour football game, it might be a hockey game, it might be figure skating, it might be something else, but how do we kind of make that an event? Well, that's location and flexibility in the facility to be able to do some of those things to not only anchor in the regular season tenants, but also can we make that event flexible and get other events in to maximize the use, and also kind of create in that bid a fan experience that's a little inside and outside the facility. So certainly we've been able to focus on and leverage, again, creating a real to Dewey's point, the atmosphere inside and outside the facility kind of bleed together in our pitches, and that's been an important piece for us.
Yeah, very good. And we can go on. We're going to try to cover a lot of ground and balance, really getting into details versus broad. But please, as you have questions or things that you want to follow up on, let us know. You can send, for those joining us via YouTube, you can send your questions in at any time. And then Jessica will monitor those, and that'll help us figure out how much time we want to leave for Q&A. Switching gears a little bit, and Scott and I talked about this as part of our prep a little bit. 9/11 changed our world, changed sports facilities for sure. There's a lot of things after that got in the rearview mirror that were good practices, but they were sparked by an unfortunate event. COVID seems to be a similar thing, an unfortunate deal that our world or issue our world is dealing with. It is changing sports facilities design operations today. Which things have been changed that are going to stay changed because they're best practices?
Oh, you're looking at me. I was hoping somebody else would go first. John, from our side, I'm not sure we've seen that longevity piece yet like we saw with, Todd mentioned the mags and everything that came out of 9/11, unfortunately, but has sustained part of just normal, part of facilities. I'm not sure we've seen that yet. I think Todd mentioned cashless probably is going to be something that's a pretty good trend. I think mobile tickets are certainly something that we're having to adjust to, and that's a very tough generational transition, to be honest with you. I still like the paper tickets to go, and if we've got people in the office that want to go versus, man, does it transfer and accept and, all this kind of stuff, but that's probably a way it's going to go. And so from our side, from the marketability of bringing events in, I think we're fortunate here that all of our facilities are there. So I think when an event requires something that's either generated by a COVID response or security response, I think we're there. So I'm kind of anxious really to see what does kind of stay on as something in 10 years. Just doesn't seem like it's anything important anymore, but it's probably going to transition.
I think, for me, again, I think the thing that's going to last is the cleaning of the facility, and that becoming a moment of who's the vendor, what methods do they use. To me, to his point, I don't think we know just yet how stadium design is going to. I think we'll need this year and probably the majority of next year to see how fans really react to full stadiums and corporations really participate in the buy side of it. But to me, it's always the cleanliness in that process that we went through to reopen, how big of a moment that was. I think in the mindset of an individual coming to a facility like this, they're going to want to know when's the last time, who did it, and what methods were used. So I think that's something early on for me that is going to have some stickiness to it.
I think from a design standpoint, we are seeing things like concessions that aren't as what we call belly up, right? You're walking through and you're picking up your packaged good and, exiting to your seat. Those types of things I think will stay around and be more prevalent. Also, just the restroom layout will be different, right? Some people are just coming to the restroom to wash their hands. So you're going to have different cycles and different ways of cycling people through the spaces in the facilities to have less touching of the door, things like that. So I think over the next 3 to 5 years, as newer facilities come online, you will see some design changes there because our clients are asking us is how can we make this more COVID friendly, or just so people don't have to touch as many things as they're going through the facility.
maybe staying a little bit on the theme of electronic and tickets, and I found that I went to my first Preds game on Saturday night, and there were people who had not downloaded the app the clear app that you needed to show that you were COVID and all that kind of stuff. And I think from a communication standpoint, organizations will just need to continue to get that out in front, because there was a long line of people that didn't even know how to get the app on their phone, and they weren't able to get in because of that. But shifting a little bit off of that, when I think about live streaming, if you're at a Titans game, maybe not tonight because it'll be the only Titans game or the only NFL game going on, but if you're at a live game on Sunday, people want to see what's going on with other games. So live streaming and Wi-Fi and the IT side of things has an infrastructure component to it that has a design component, a cost component, an operational component. What are we seeing differently, or what should we anticipate differently in that regard?
More of it. just a lot more of it. The new generation of fan wants to not only be there but tell their friends that they're there multiple times and not have any interruption as they're doing that. So more of that, more sports bar type settings within the facility, so I can be at a game, be watching. I can be in Nissan Stadium watching the Titans, but also see the other game that may be going on Sunday, and be able to interact. Sports betting, all of these things are right around the corner in terms of design of these facilities.
I think that's a big one that we haven't even thought about, was sports betting, because right now we are seeing with the younger generation that Demetra doesn't want to talk about because she's one of them. You can actually go into a stadium and buy an SRO ticket just because you don't want to sit in the seat. You want to be in the action. You want to tell everybody you've been there. I mean, the Wi-Fi, the DAS, all the back of the house things that it takes to make that happen is gigantic. It's expensive, but it doesn't take a lot to run it, but it has to work, or the whole concept doesn't work. But I call that enhancements. So when I look at a stadium, which I'll talk about later, I look at three things: inflation. What does it look like compared to what it cost previously? What are the enhancements that you have now that you didn't have before? And then what's the atmosphere you want to create while people are there? And they all have costs. But the beauty is they all have revenues. I mean, we have signage on concourses that will actually read how long a person stopped in front of that graphic to look at it during a football game, and Todd calls them the next day and say, "You got 40,000 hits. You only gave me money for 30. You owe me 10,000 hits." So the revenue side is what they can do on revenue is unbelievable.
Well, that's you took the words right out of my mouth. I hear all of that, and I hear opportunity, right? I mean, where previously, 20, 30 years ago, it was a direct cost. What is the cost to put this inside of my facility? Now it's not, and we spend a lot of time. Our partnership side, our premium side spends a lot of time with our project development, with Jeff, working with the architects, working with the design team, that when those decisions are being made in the procurement process, it's done through almost a mini RFP process through the vendors. Who's going to spend to do that? So design of the facility, what actually gets put inside the building from a technology or wiring standpoint, all has to be thought of what revenue is that producing back for us. And I think if you go into construction projects that way, you typically find the right vendor who's willing to play, but also their brand story meets what the ownership or what the brand story of that facility should be, and that cost is either mitigated or you make money off of it in the future. And I think that then pushes forth the best facilities that can be built. But it has to be all done through the procurement process. So having your revenue and your construction lines tied at the hip, not just thinking about on time, on budget, but thinking about on time, and budget is really impacted by how much money each of these individual vertical decisions that we have to make. Who's the vendor that's willing to pay for that?
Again, from my view, it's a little broader. But technology is now the key in about every bid that we go forward with, John. I mean, it's from the fan standpoint, I think the electronic, boards versus the old static signs are tremendous, where you can do a lot more for Todd stand sell takeovers, those kind of things. The main boards, the areas with technology, the Wi-Fi for fans, but also we're seeing the events that have television production, they're sending less and less on site and doing a lot more remote. So to do that, you've got to have the ability in the facilities to be able to handle that kind of production. Where are you going to put it? How are you going to build it in? And if you don't have it, how can you retrofit that in, which we've seen. So, just like on our bowl game, I think over half of the games last year, obviously it was during COVID, but you're seeing that trend to where they're just doing remote productions. And, the facilities got to originate that. You're seeing that with the SEC network for a lot of didn't used to be televised sporting events. Now you've got to have a major facility component for that. So I think from our standpoint, the technology's going to be the key in the future facilities and being able to plug and play, not just for the fans, but for the operational piece of it.
Well, staying on the theme of revenue and marketability of spaces, what is really changing now from what are the most marketable spaces in facilities, which spaces generate the most revenue, the most profit, or maybe the ones that cost the most but generate the least profit? What's changing there?
That's a great question. I think it's still an 80-20 rule, right? The 80% of your revenue is going to come from 20% of the seats, right? In any facility. It's your hospitality, your premium, your corporate areas you're still going to be able to drive that. And I think what we're seeing is, in a really odd way, some of that was starting to go away because it became a job for corporations or wealthy individuals to distribute tickets or go to a series of events. COVID has kind of brought that fandom or that interest of I've got to be there back. But the products that I see moving forward, and I've got to give a ton of credit to minor league baseball, was really, in my opinion, one of the first to really latch onto this. Is it's the small seating, small group type settings. It's your half moon tables, it's your loge boxes, it's your 4 to 6 seat products that you can put in really strategic areas of your facility, some in prime locations, some in dead space, that are really driving high margins and high yield. And because it's the days of 20 people owning a 20-person suite are over. Right? That becomes work. You have to hire somebody else to manage those tickets, and that's just not what it's going to be moving forward. But corporations, and you can drive really significant yield on small seating products and buildings. The other thing, and then I'll let the real smart person that designs this stuff go, is using dead space in your building, using field level, using behind the scenes. Even, we started on this probably about 10 or 15 years ago, bunker suites. Right? So you're starting to see more and more concepts like that in facilities where it would just be warehouse or storage or back of house that you now can convert or permanently have it be built out as significant, premium inventory that gets people down onto the event level, whether they have a view or not. People are willing to pay for that.
Everything that Todd said. Plus, we have to also look at this venue when there's not a game. How are you getting people in the venue when there's not a game, whether it be a club space, events like this, being able to program the building so it can be used not 8 or 10 or 12 or 86 times a year, but more like 300 times a year. That is where you're really, the revenue gets to, you get the revenue boost for the facility, and it also becomes a place for the community, right? Everyone knows of this place as, hey, we're going to go there for this event. So in addition to, yes, no one wants the 24-person suite anymore. We're seeing a lot of reduction there for going for the loge boxes that are from 4 to 6 to 8 person. But for us as a design professional, I think we're really trying to make sure the building can be programmed many more times a year. And it's also a sustainability thing. It's also, we want this building to not just be a massive sustainability suck 8 times a year. And I'm picking on NFL because usually those are the massive buildings that don't get used that many times. But being able to program it so you can only use half of the building from a and Scott, you can probably speak to this better than I, but from a utilities and only using half of the building and not having to turn all the lights on in the building, things like that. So that's some of the things that we're focusing on, again, from a sustainability and a revenue standpoint.
I mean, just to kind of add on, I agree with Todd on now that we're talking about events in the future. You used to get the question of how many tickets can we get in there and how many suites do you have. Now it's where's the flex space? Where's the space that we can put 100 people, maybe sell 100 different tickets, or 20 sets of 5, but they can watch the game, mix and mingle, walk around a place like this, still see the game and not see the game. And that's the primary corporate ask in when we're kind of packaging those bids. And then to Demetra's point on being able to turn, I think, and I know Monica's here. I mean, that's one thing that we've worked hard on with our city. We're busy. Bridgestone Arena, for example, is busy. I don't know the exact stat, but it was in the top 2 or 3 most busy buildings in the country last 2 or 3 years. So how do we maximize those use? But more importantly, how's the back space flexible enough to make that turn? Operationally, load in, load outs from concert to hockey to basketball is pretty important. And Bridgestone, I think, and the Preds and the Sports Authority have done a great job kind of keeping that up to date. And we do have some space that's pretty unique in our town. We have a big rehearsal hall where it can turn into a major media center, a very dome-like, but we have an arena setting. But boy, being able to turn is part of the design piece that is really critical if you're going to try to maximize the day, so you don't have those dark days in between.
No, I mean, I think in America that's exactly it, right? I mean, it's a convention center. Essentially is what stadiums are nowadays, and your business model's got to be able to reflect that through design and how quickly can it flip. Conversely, in Europe and beyond, because again those are very historic old venues, they're more worried about how can spaces within the seating bowl be converted, right? I mean, if they're playing in, take Man City. They're playing in Premier League, well, on Tuesday and Wednesday, they may play in Champions, big matches. How can the stadium be converted from a seating bowl standpoint that on their Saturday match against Norwich City, that they can condense the premium? When they have PSG coming in for Champions League, they can convert and open up some of the seating along the sides or closer to the premium areas that still has access into the club space. So I think, again, where we go in the world, I think dictates then what that flexibility needs to be for the venue. But I think the European side is going to start to morph into the U.S., where she lives is the mecca of major sporting events over the next decade, between Super Bowl coming, World Cup. Obviously, they're going to be in town here soon making their final decisions, and at least 2 of your buildings are going to be part of it. And then, you guys could be a part of it here. So I think making sure that our buildings can flex a little bit to meet that, call it world consumer mentality, because once we pull off the World Cup and then the Olympics in 28, the major events for North America are going to continue to come back, and our buildings are going to have to meet that world culture.
Let's shift a little bit from revenue to cost. And Dewey, I'm going to start with you here. In this market,
does that mean I get to turn my mic off?
Certainly from a market condition standpoint, we're all in the design and construction community very aware of escalation and just supply chain, all those issues. I think supply chain, or we think supply chain, is going to relieve itself, get back to some normalcy sooner than later, but escalation remains real. So as our clients, as owners and designers and operators, are trying to balance their budget on what can I afford from a cost standpoint, what counsel should we be giving?
I think the biggest one is having the right players at the table early. And I say that because I have a lot of clients that, let's say you built a $600 million stadium 10 years ago. And for ease of my math skills, 3% a year, it's 30%. So now you're talking about $700+ million for a stadium. So people say that's a lot of money. And if you built a $700 million stadium today, what you would have is a brand new 10-year-old stadium. So inflation is only one piece. And the first or second time I meet with clients, they base their whole budget, on, yeah, we escalated. We like the Bears, so we took the Bears, we moved it to this city, we escalated, now we have the Bears budget. And the Bears is 15 years old. So you have a brand new stadium that's 15 years old. The enhancement part of that is a whole nother set of things. What Todd and Demetra talked about, internet, Wi-Fi, club spaces, take out the suites, put in loge boxes so a group of 10 people can go buy a suite for the night. You don't have to own it for the whole year because you can't fill it, so they don't buy it. So the enhancement of the stadium is what's changed. That's another 30% from 10 years ago. I mean, that's another 150 million. Now you're up to 850, 900. And then the atmosphere. What's the atmosphere you want to create? I mean, most stadiums we do now, the entire club level is enclosed. Fireplaces, TVs, places to go and veg out sometime during the game, because with all this stuff, there's also sensory overload if you stay in the bowl the whole time. You've got to get out of there. So you take inflation, enhancement, atmosphere, you're talking about 50% more than a 10-year-old stadium, and now you're at the $900 billion mark where we're seeing NFL. I could do the same thing for baseball. MLS, 10 years ago, we were building MLS stadiums for 70 to 90 million all day long. Now you can't touch it for 200. So that's way more than just inflation. That's an atmosphere is a gigantic piece of that, and enhancement, but MLS has just gone through the roof, but that's what their fans want, and it's all good. So the revenue side is off the charts too. So when you think of cost, it's the cost of what you want the experience to be, but all those things come with revenue too. So costs can always be balanced with revenue. You don't need a $3 billion stadium. You don't need 2 million square feet. If you have the right atmosphere, the enhancements and the revenue stream coming in, you can really do whatever you want at any cost.
Demetra, your thoughts from the design side?
I think the atmosphere is becoming more expensive because it's catered to the individual now. So I can't, before I had club seats, I had GA, and I had suites. Now I have club seats, suites, GA, loge, theater box, standing room only. So all of those things start to add up. And not because each space costs the same amount, but now you're creating this diversity of spaces, diversity of food type. Everything wants to be local to the community and to that city. Any facility that's in Nashville wants to be catered to Nashville, wants to have hot chicken, right? It wants to have things that Nashville people like. We can no longer take, to Dewey's point, the stadium from 10 years ago and plant it in Nashville. We have to cater it to Nashville. So that's the atmosphere that you're seeing from a design perspective that really matters, and that's what's bringing people from their homes to the facility. Without that, I could watch the game at home.
How about differences between all of these things, differences between collegiate or minor league versus professional? Is anything different, or is it all the same?
Well, from my perspective, they're different, right? Because I think the end goal for a university is astronomically different than an owner of a professional sports franchise. And then the process to make decisions is different. So to me, I think all of this can be summed up from, and Jeff's going to laugh at me because it was a word I said earlier, and it goes back to where Dewey was going, which is the ideation process has to happen earlier. And you have to onboard all your vendors if you're going to outsource certain portions of the business. They've all got to be at the table at one time for a couple reasons. One, they can hear the brand story and the messaging from the university president or the team owner. What is their vision and what are their expectations and what's their objective? From there, it's some version of us that goes off and ideates on that behalf. But in college, it's preserving the fact that it's higher education and not necessarily about athletics, although you're masking that. But it's similar to what Notre Dame did, right? Notre Dame pulled off the $400 million renovation of the stadium, and the tie-in to get that done was that revenue went back to the school, went back to campus. They get new facility, can keep some of the incremental revenue streams, but a majority of the financials that were given went back to the campus, not to the athletic program, right? So I think it's thinking about that, thinking about what the overall objective and the desire of the major constituent making the decision, and then having an ideation session that allows them then to choose what matches what their market's telling you, what products exist, or what experiential elements exist now or will exist in the future, and letting them make the decision on what they want to do.
Can I add one thing to that? The biggest difference I see between collegiate, and it's any sport in collegiate, and the pros, is we spend a lot of money on athletics programs at universities of any size for recruiting. Bringing that person to your school and putting your arm around that person and saying, this is where you're going to play, that's a big deal. You don't have a lot of that in professional because there's drafts and there's other things, and a lot of those people know where they want to go or they can leave when their contract's up. But if you're going to spend 4 or 5 years at a collegiate level sports, knowing that the future could be something for you that's great, recruiting behind the scenes and on the field is a big deal.
Adding to the recruiting piece, John, I think the blend of the collegiate and the professional venues, for me or for anybody in my role in any city, is going to give you what you can go bid on as far as events coming. Can we go bid on the Olympic trial swimming? No, we don't really have a world-class natatorium that could do that. So I think sometimes when you're sitting down with the leadership and you're thinking about what fits in your city, that you can go really recruit and build a world-class facility, it's a lot of that combination thinking between the collegiate. If you have major colleges, we just hosted 2 years ago the Davis Cup quarterfinals in Belmont's facility, 4,000 or 5,000 seats. It fit down, it was very unique, and it worked. But I think you need to have that partnership because, yes, you can build football stadiums, soccer stadiums, and hockey stadiums and basketball arenas. Those other sports also are a big recruiting ground, very facility driven, and a lot of times that's a partnership with the collegiate market as much as it is the professional side.
We're going to shift real quick into maybe just some quick hitters, cover a little more ground, and then we're going to, hopefully, are we getting some questions in already? Okay, very good. So then we'll go to the audience for questions here in about 10 minutes. Excuse me. Project out 10 years. What is the biggest thing that will be different 10 years from now when it comes to sports facility design?
I think facilities will be smaller in capacity, but it will be projected out through, all types of media, through technology, whether that's AR, VR. More people will be able to interact with the game, but the facility itself will likely be smaller. That's what we're seeing.
I would say I 100% agree with that, but I think the interest of people being involved in the event will still be the same. It'll just happen in a different way. There'll be the in-venue experience. There'll be the out-of-venue experience. You see, a lot of districts being built in and around some of the recent projects. I think that becomes more of the forefront of it's a campus and an overall district experience. Venue may be smaller, but I also do think, the hospitality that takes place outside in the footprint of the venue becomes more of an opportunity, at least particularly from the revenue side, of how we have a product or an experience or capture everybody that wants to be a part of it if they can't get inside the venue.
Deer District is a perfect example of that. Everyone saw that for the NBA Finals, right? Majority of the people were actually outside the facility experiencing it. So these, sports-anchored districts are going to be a big driver.
That sounds like Nashville, our district. No, I agree. I think smaller, John. I think as you recruit events, you very seldom get the question of how many seats do you have anymore. It's what's in the facility and what's around the facility. And I certainly think creating that, we've all talked about it, atmosphere, environment, and flexibility, and the ability to really play an NFL playoff game in the middle of January in Nashville on Sunday, but have the national championship game on Monday night? Is that possible anymore? How do you create the turf? How do you create the turn? Can you do the signage? Can you do all those things? I think is going to be the question. If you're going to invest billions in facilities, how do you maximize the use of them? And that'll come down to technology and the ability to kind of create them.
What makes an event, any event, look great on TV, and how does that get built into the design and construction?
I'll go again. The lighting. The lighting is it's like no one realizes how important the lighting is for broadcasting. The lighting is for energy in the facility. If you go, and I'm in LA, so if you go to the Staples Center for a Lakers event, the lighting is completely different from a Clippers event, which is completely different from a concert. So the lighting does a lot. And if you take that to collegiate, you're seeing a lot of collegiate facilities, specifically arenas, do interesting things with the floor, the basketball floor. But the lighting is what really makes it pop on TV.
I'm going to go to the television production side, John, because now you're getting cameras everywhere. So you're going to move away from the static box. Here's where your camera goes at the 50-yard line shot, the high end zone shot, and now cameras everywhere. They're on the pylons. They're not the roving guy behind the players anymore. So the ability in the facility to think ahead of that and being able to have the technology that TV can come in and make it look like an incredible, like you're there. Is where TV's going with that. So the newer facilities have a big advantage over the older facilities just out of pure operational opportunities for the television side.
I'll just add to that. When we were talking about costs earlier, Demetra said lighting's the biggest component. What's the biggest component of cost besides structure? Lighting. So keep their lights to a minimum. No, just kidding. I see drones over the offensive huddle here in the plays to see if the people at home actually watch them get carried out. No, I'm just kidding. Bill Belichick used to do that. No, I think it's just the atmosphere. I think the level of service is going to go up because the nice thing, not that there's nothing nice about COVID, but one of the things from COVID that will last is as we get to touchless and less things and people knowing how to do everything themselves, there's going to be a lot of savings in the labor side of operations over 30 years of facility, and I think that's going to be pumped back into service. Because the nice thing I like about venues where you can just go talk to somebody, where am I going, what am I doing, those are just make me feel like I'm in an awesome place because the people want me there. And I think that level of service is going to go up.
Hey, let's get to questions from you, our live audience here, and then again a reminder on YouTube there should be a chat box where you can submit a question to Jessica. Jessica's got a microphone back here. Anybody in the audience have a question to start? Don Harden is right up front. Do you mind coming up front, Jess, to Don?
Thank you. Very informative panelist. Love hearing what you guys had to say. I had 3 questions, but I'll ask one of them. I think Todd kind of touched on what's going on around the world. I'd had a chance to visit my team in London, Arsenal. So I'm wondering who's ahead of the curve on stadiums worldwide. Is the United States trying to play catch up? Are we leading the curve there?
Well, I think we are setting the standard by it's not even close. I think Tottenham obviously is probably the best example internationally of where they're headed. I typically, when I'm on that side of the world, and I try to do this in not a derogatory way, but they're us in the 90s, right? If you go to the early 90s, we were still, the Cubs were still playing all-day games. Right? So about midway through the 90s, the evolution of building new facilities started. They're just on the cusp of that. As they, if you take Wanda, Atletico Madrid, getting their stadium done, the renovation of the Bernabeu that's about to or is underway and about to be complete. Tottenham, Wembley went through their kind of scenario. So I think as they start to see what we can do and where we've evolved to over time, I think you'll see Europe. And then I'm starting to fixate more and more on South America, because if Europe's in the 90s, they're in the 70s, right? And so we are setting the standard hands down from design, functionality, thought process of it being a 365-day venue, and then the experiential side, we're hands down above and beyond where they're at.
Okay, great. I got another question, but I'll share.
Yeah, go ahead.
Demetra had mentioned smaller venues, projecting smaller venues in the future. What is that going to do for attracting big events like the World Cup? I mean, so if a few venues in 10 years from now go to being smaller, but yet you have these big events, does that leave opportunities for like Jerry Jones World to stand alone? What do you see there from a smaller venue?
No, I think it's smaller, but it still has the ability to expand into a larger facility. So we're never taking off the table that you're going to seat 80,000 or 100,000, but you're not building for Easter Sunday, right? Previously, we were building for Easter Sunday, and trying to fill it. Where now we are trying to make it the best fan experience 98% of the time, and then solving for that 2% of the time, World Cup, Super Bowl, Olympics, you name it. So that's what I would project out in that 10-year.
Yeah, I would just add to that is we're looking at two different types of stadiums right now in terms of the sport that's played, and both are smaller, but none of them are getting smaller than you need to have to capture the big events. They're not going that small.
The other thing is, too, FIFA's still a business. So smaller to them means higher yield. So their revenue streams could be the same or bigger even in a smaller venue. What it gives them the opportunity to do for large major events like that, it is about the hospitality experience in the town. There's one experience or a multitude of experiences that will happen inside the venue that they get really strategic, and we're their North American sponsorship rights for FIFA. So we get really strategic of who gets brought what opportunity. But that experience then, while they're in town for the World Cup, there'll be, there'll be 3-4 matches that maybe take place at that venue. That fan base is coming in looking to do something around. So will FIFA go take space at different places to offer different levels of hospitality experience? So smaller venues, I think, is the norm for American sports. They'll be able to flex for major events, but it means higher yield in certain instances, but it also then gives them an opportunity to expand the experience and still capture money in your town.
And I would add the atmosphere on that too. I'll take the SEC basketball tournament that we're fortunate enough to have here now all the way through 2035. And when we were bidding against Atlanta and New Orleans and Dallas and Tampa and everybody, and it rotated around, one of the questions in the early 2000s was, well, in the Georgia Dome at the time, we could get 23,000 people in there because we could seat 30 versus 17 or 18 in Bridgestone Arena. Well, now that it's here, demand is good from Todd's standpoint, and secondly, it just creates an environment. It's full, it's loud, it's high demand, and you never had a sellout in the Georgia Dome for the SEC tournament. Yeah, I mean, you could get to a higher number, but the atmosphere wasn't even close to what it's like here, both downtown around the arena, but also inside the facility for the players. So I think there's a balance there, and to Demetra's point, I think AT&T is one of the best things where they could flex. I know the Cotton Bowl folks, based on the thing, you go from 70 to 100 or something. So, I think there's some creativity there on the size, but day in, day out, a little smaller, more compact, really creates more demand for events.
Yes, sir.
Demetria mentioned
Picked on here.
sustainability and looking at the footprint of various venues. Is renewable energy playing a large part in the planning, or are we still a little bit early for that?
We are and I can speak for as a design professional from Gensler, that is like the forefront of our mind is renewable energy, PV, water sustainability depending on the climate, wind, again, depending on the climate, and just really taking that into account early on in the design, not not trying to solve for that later. It's too late after the design is set to solve for that. So just really, pushing even our clients in many jurisdictions in many cities to think about this very early on, because it's a real problem that we should solve.
Any other questions here? I'll ask Jess to. We'll go up front.
Thank you, Jackie Akbari. When I hear more about ways to create additional revenue, I'm thinking two different things. On the collegiate side, name, image, likeness has come up. In terms of the facilities and creating and designing facilities, any thoughts on how that might impact?
I have a few ideas. So there's a good and it's only upside from the NIL things that we're seeing, and that's getting players and getting athletes, an opportunity to shine, and building things like studios into the design, into their locker rooms, and really focusing on them as a whole person, so that people are asking them to speak, and how are they getting media training and things like that. So we're seeing a lot of that being built into their training and their stadiums, because everyone wants them to succeed. And I think previously with the NIL talk, that wasn't necessarily the case. But those are some of the things we're seeing on the design side. Studios, what else studios are the ones that come to mind first.
The other thing for me, and it goes back to what he said, it's the facilities that help you recruit, right? So, I think on each of these campuses, there's a performance center, right? Or the athletic, I just was at Boston College. They had, it's a couple years old, but they had their indoor football training facility. I think you're just going to start to see more and more of that take place in college. The locker rooms have kind of been a thing that's done. And Title IX, I think, has been great because it's got to be done for both sides of the equation. It's not just one. But I think you're going to start to see more and more, call it human performance centers that are developed in and around college. Helps for recruitment, obviously, gets their athletes in better condition to go perform. But it does become something, again, for the rest of the campus, if they can integrate it the right way, it becomes another reason for the person that is just going to get a biology degree. It becomes a reason for them to be there. Athletics are better, the facilities are better, and I have access to it. I think you'll see some of that from a design and maybe construction standpoint on universities and colleges.
One of the questions while Jessica walks around with any other in-person questions, thanks for your questions coming through YouTube. Again, you can submit those via the chat, and if you would just put your name, the company you're with, and which city you're in, we will go ahead and get to those. One that came through that builds off of an issue we talked on a little bit earlier is sports betting. It seems like that's a wave that's coming into shore very, very strongly. What are we doing about that? And then what are we doing about esports?
Want me to take that? Sports betting is problematic in a couple of ways. One is first you have to have a state, or in some cases a county, that allows it, which has issues of its own. Then the sanctioning body has to participate in that in some way. Of course, they're going to take something off the top of whatever happens there. And then you have to have the facilities that are safe and places where people can go. I mean, a lot of the design of the new facilities on any sport are family events. And we got to be a little careful with how we do the betting thing. But of course, you can bet on a lot of things, but will it actually take place at the venue? That's going to be a whole different issue of problems that'll cross. It's going to be a ways out. But I mean, places like Alabama has on the ballot next year is sports betting anywhere you want to bet, even on the property. But will the facilities do it? That's going to be a question.
I think it'll happen on your phone. I don't think it'll be live there, and I think it'll be in a special area. So that'll be I talked about suites, clubs. There will be a sports betting club that people, to Dewey's point, so you have a demographic that wants that environment, and you're not necessarily putting it throughout the entire facility.
Jessica, what do we have? Anything else online?
No, I think you hit them right on the head. That was it.
Okay, very good. Hey, natural grass or artificial turf?
From my standpoint, anything that can turn an event to an event quicker. But at the same time, I mean, we've had that conversation in Nissan Stadium for many years now, and I think it still goes back to the technology advances of artificial turf, as we refer to it now. I think the old, the old stuff was just leading to many injuries, and it was too difficult. At the same time, living here in the Mid-South, that transitional grass area is difficult to maintain during winter months. So it limits what you could do on the field if you're going to actually play and turn the field. We struggle with that with the bowl game to the Titans. So I'm a little conflicted. I like seeing games on grass. At the same time, from an event standpoint, it limits what we can do in being able to turn the facility from event to event.
The purist in me, natural. The guy that has to cut my own grass, give me artificial. But I think I would lean more towards it's probably better to go artificial because you can flip your venue quicker. But again, for major events, specifically in the world of international football, they only play on grass. And so having the ability to convert to that quickly so that way you don't miss out on those opportunities, you have to have that flexibility as well.
Demetra, I'm assuming this is a question that gets asked on every sports facility. You spend a lot of time on this on the front end?
We do. And as an athlete, natural. As an architect, turf. For us, it's a lot about getting the turf to grow, right? If you have a canopy of any sort, getting sun to usually the southern portion of the facility, it's always in shade. So I'm torn.
Your thoughts on, I've had people ask me this, the number of cameras that are there. You feel like with high-def TV and cameras that in your living room you feel like you're at the game. How will that change attendance? How does the experience that we enjoy at home influence a person's desire to go to a live event?
When getting home from the game, is kind of what we hear a lot, especially on events where they bring a lot of people to town. They're talking about, do I need to rent a car? That's our advantage that we sell for Nashville. You can stay downtown, you walk to facilities, it's all right there, it's part of it, and it eliminates that piece. But I think you're starting to see that, John, now already. The viewing, the product on television is so good that TV's doing. It makes you kind of think it through a little bit. I may see if COVID really, has a long-term effect on that because you've gotten used to watching it on TV for a year or so.
I'm going to zag on that a little bit. I think what I'm seeing is it's not keeping people away. It's maybe making them rethink whether or not I buy a season ticket or am I a member. But the interest of how well the high definition is, the new cameras. I mean, when they brought the gamification camera in a couple years ago, to me, it's what we're hearing and what we're seeing through data. People still want to come to an event. They still want to go. It's the decision process. Do I do it for a full season? Yep. Right? And so to me, I think it's helped in a weird way because it's helped from a revenue generation side. Our databases are getting bigger because more and more people are single match, single game, one-time event. Then it becomes our responsibility. Are we making it compelling enough and marketing to them on their terms to bring them back? So the season ticket may not be a way that people are purchasing anymore because of this, but you may get a series of events still out of them at higher yield.
Totally agree about the investment, which just frankly makes your life more complicated because you don't have the season ticket people to count on. But everyone always still wants to say, I was there, right? I was there at Monday Night Football. I was there at the Super Bowl. So there's still that passion in people, I think, to want to be there and enjoy it with your friends live at the event. I think to your point about the person that only comes maybe 1 or 2 times a year, now the onus is on us from a design perspective to make that experience seamless. So even if they only come once or twice a year, they have a great experience, whether that be in signage, graphics, getting to their seats, getting the parking, all those things. So they want to come back that next year, even since you don't have the season ticket. You know what we like about season ticket holders is that they know the facility, they know how to get to their seats, they know the gate that doesn't have long lines and things like that. Whereas that 1 time or 2 time a year visitor doesn't necessarily know that intuitively.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I'll take a zig from your zag. I mean, if you had your way, you'd be selling tickets for the first half and the second half in the same seat.
I'd be, yeah, exactly. Quarter by quarter.
But, you know, we've talked about this for a long time. And, I mean, I still see people go to a parking lot at football games and plug the TV in and watch the game in the back of their truck in the parking lot. They never go in the game. But I think that the TV person versus the live person, that's always been an argument. But the stadiums themselves have gotten so much better in terms of electronics and replays and all the other stuff now you can't get at home. The desire to go to a game is totally still there.
Yeah. Jess, you have a question?
We had one question that maybe just didn't get touched on. So it's about esports, and I think the interesting part would just be to understand how are esporting events different than our traditional athletic events, and what do venues need to consider in preparation for esporting?
Technology. Well, I mean, I think that's a given, right? That's not earth-shattering information, but I mean, the way that they consume the event is pretty static, right? I mean, the combatants are actually doing their thing, but the rest are watching a series of boards. So I think, you know, and there's not a lot of dead time in esports when the event's going on. So I think trying to have the facility operate one way to get them there early and give them some type of atmosphere or experience or hospitality, somewhat trying to get out of the way while the event is going on, but then turn back the atmosphere and the experiential and hospitality at the end. But to me, it's all, do you have the technology to be able to host the event?
Or do you have the infrastructure to support technology coming in? Because you may not need it built into your facility, but you need to be able to support it coming in.
Jess?
What is the future for primarily NFL stadiums versus enclosed versus open? There's a lot of legacy stadiums out there. Tremendous investment.
I think it's an investment, right? And I think there's, again, like if the 2 stadiums in the north that are being talked about right now in Illinois and upstate New York, I think you'll see those stay open-aired because it's generational, it's historic, and then, again, slapping a roof on there may take the economics to a point where it doesn't make sense in certain markets. So I still think that that's going to be really owner by owner, city by city, really evaluating the investment that it would take to put the roof on.
Yeah, I see, I don't know, was it 10 or 15 years ago when they had the Super Bowl in a cold climate, somebody said, not the commissioner, we'll never go to another place where it's cold. So there was a wave of roofs, right? And there was a big pushback from the fans. And that's part of the atmosphere is are you going to take a gamble with your base if you go to the dome or no dome situation? And some of them are like an umbrella where in LA there's a roof, but it's an open air stadium, just happens to have a roof, but there's no walls. So they kind of did a mixture of both. But in LA that climate works. Doesn't work in Detroit or Buffalo or other places like that. But to me, it's a question of who's really the base and who's buying the product. You can't do it just for one Super Bowl.
The question for us as a city, a little bit, is the investment going to pay off down the road? So what events can we possibly bid on or recruit? You're not guaranteed you're going to get it, but we can't compete right now probably for a Super Bowl in the Mid-South on natural grass in early February, and the College National Championship game, or the Men's Final Four. All three which events would do incredible in our city downtown if you've seen how we kind of put on events and host things. And just because of the facility requirements. That doesn't mean you do it, because it might be cost prohibitive. As Todd said, I think it's got to be a city decision of kind of where you go. But from our side of bidding on and recruiting events, those are three examples for us that a roof would allow us to get. Now, does that equate enough return on a maybe what if you get them to invest in something that starts with a B? I don't know. I think that's the conversation for the Titans ownership, our city, our state, and some of the corporate leaders here that would have to invest in that to do it. So, from our side, what facility you have dictates what you can recruit to your city.
Yeah, Jess?
Got one more.
All right.
Hi, name's Dylan Dunn, and I had a question about the kind of entertainment districts that were mentioned earlier. And so I grew up in Nashville, grew up going to Titans games. Tailgating was a huge part of that, and I don't think that sea of parking lots are either ecologically nor economically sustainable. But how do you all envision these entertainment districts kind of absorbing the role that tailgating plays, or that culture and that atmosphere? And kind of to your point about the TV watcher in the van in the parking lot, how do you kind of prepare for that, or help that culture evolve as venues move into the future?
I'll take it. I don't know. It's a really good question. I think what it is that I think you got to be forthright with your communication of what you're doing on the front end. But I also think you got to be thoughtful too. Is that, look, that culture of tailgating is never going to leave, right? So you may be taking what is current tailgating space. How are you building some of that back into the design? Maybe although looking slightly different, but people are still going to want to pull their cars up and throw the football around and drink and eat. Right. So are you looking for other places to offset that? I think you've got to go through that process and survey your fan base of what would be acceptable before you go through that. But the reality of it is the districts are, to your point, a way more sustainable way to build the brand and have connectivity to a group of individuals that may never come inside, but they'll be in your district on a Tuesday night because it's overlooking your venue. And so to me, that is a brand builder, a revenue stream, and longevity of the franchise is a better way to go about your business than 8 or 9 Sundays a year getting the parking revenue and letting people throw the football around.
If I can just add to that, you still have to park people whether they're at the game or the other venue. So you still need the acreage is the biggest thing we see. You still need the acreage. And the other thing, we see it more in baseball than football or other sports, just because 80 games can support a surrounding venue of retail and food and beverage. The 10 or 12 games you get just for football that are remotely located, it's a little more problematic.
I'm optimistic, but there's a design solution, I think, for a lot of these problems. I totally agree. We've always been successful by surveying the fan base and knowing really what the city wants, what percentage are really tailgating, and understanding that and catering to that. I think people feel better if they feel like I've catered this to them and what they want anyway. So it would be better than the sea of parking that currently exists that isn't catered to them, frankly.
Our time has gone by very quickly. We're right at the top of the hour. So I want to thank everybody, Scott, Demetra, Todd, and Dewey, my old friend. Thanks so much for your wisdom and sharing your expertise and your thoughts. This has been great. Thanks to everyone who has been here in person to come out early on a Monday morning, and thanks for everyone that's joined us on YouTube. We are going to wrap. Everyone have a great day and a great week.
Thank you.